left, 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 right, left. Hey there, Staff Sergeant. If you want to keep moving up in the ranks, we're going to have to work through this level on solving equations by using the distributive property. So that's a good title for your notes for today. We're in level 5, about halfway through this boot camp. And we're working on solving equations. I know it seems like a lot, but solving equations by using the distributive property. So it's a long title, but it's exactly what we're doing today. Our learning targets for today: to solve equations by using the distributive property, and to solve equations by combining like terms. We did the combining like terms part in the last lesson, level 4, but it'll come up again today a little bit. Success criteria in order to be successful today. You got to know how to use this distributive property, so we're going to review that. Remember that anytime you solve an equation, you must always distribute first if necessary. So if we see something where that distributive property could come up, we got to do that right away. All right, that's just an important thing to remember. Then combining like terms if there's anything to do that, and again, that only works to like terms that are on the same side of the equation. But then finally, solving the remainder of the equation using inverse operations that we've done in the correct order, like two-step equations where we take the part that's not attached to the variable away first, and then we work to the part that is attached. So let's start off with some vocabulary. First one is the main one for today, distributive property. You can see over to the right here, we have an example of what it looks like. Basically, distributive property, if you recall, is when a number is multiplied by the sum of numbers. So we have a multiplied by the sum, like a plus b. It could be a plus negative c, or sorry, in the parentheses, b plus negative c, or b minus c. But then that multiplication is distributed to each of the numbers in the sum. So we just distribute the a times the b and the a times the c, and that's where we get that. All right, we're going to review like terms as well, because like terms are going to come up a little bit. So like terms are those terms containing the same variable raised to the same power, and you can add those. That's the big thing there. And then finally, inverse operations. It shows up all chapter long. Anytime you solve an equation, you're going to use inverse operations. Those are those mathematical operations that undo each other. In other words, they're opposites. So addition and subtraction, subtraction and addition, multiplication and division and multiplication. So let's just do a quick recap. Using the distributive property, how can we simplify this expression? We have 5 times x plus 5. Well, that's when you have multiplication and you distribute that multiplication to both of the parts on the inside. So I'm going to do 5. So I'm going to say that's the same as 5 times x. Bring it out on our plus sign, and then 5 times 5, which simplifies to 5x plus 25. So there's how we simplify using the distributive property. And in this section, we're going to use that within equations. So here's an example for you. Let's just look at this first example to the left. So example number 1. And I'd like you to write this down. This is the first one we're going to do. It says negative 3 times 6 plus 3x equals negative 72. So it looks like an equation that we have. We can solve for x. We want to start on the side with the variable like we usually do. But we have the variable term inside of parentheses. We have parentheses here. We can't have parentheses here. So anytime you see parentheses on either side of an equation, we have to get rid of them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this negative 3 and distribute it first. And we're only distributing it to what's inside of the parentheses. And to nothing else, just what's inside of it. So we'd have negative 3 times 6. And we'd have plus negative 3 times 3x. Oh, I'm messing everything up here. All right, here we go. Times 3x. So I'm going to simplify that right away before I bring everything else down. That's negative 18 plus negative 9x equals negative 72. Now it's like we have a two-step equation. So what are you going to do next? We're going to get rid of that negative 18 that's added to the negative 9x, or we're going to get rid of that negative 9 that's multiplied by the x? Well, recall we get rid of what's farther away from the variable, what's not attached. So we're going to actually get rid of this negative 18 by adding 18. And we'll add 18 over the other side of the equation. and bring down what's left over. Negative 72 plus 18 would be negative 54 equals negative 9x. And our last step would be divide by negative 9. You end up with x equals 6. Remember to always check your answer. You can plug that back in. If I do it mentally, I got 3 times 6 in the parentheses there instead of 3 times x. That's 18 plus the 6 that's in there would get me 24. And I can check on my calculator. 24 times negative 3 does get me to negative 72, which means we did it correctly. Now, how can we put that into a procedure that we can always use when there's distributed property? Well, it's right here. And I'd suggest writing this down. Always start by locating the variable and start on that side, which we did. Then we use the distributive property because there was a case where we needed to use the distributive property. Next step would be combining the like terms on that same side if possible, but there was nothing here we could combine. Then negative 18 and negative 9 were not like terms, and there was nothing else on the right side either. So then we finished solving it like it was a two-step equation. And then we checked our answer. So if you need to pause it and write down this procedure, I would highly suggest doing so. And we're going to do one more here. And this will actually include like terms. So if we look at this example 2, we've got negative 67 equals negative 4n plus 3 times the parentheses 1 plus 6n. So we locate the variable. There's actually in 2 spots, but they're both on the right side of the equation. So we're going to work on this right side here. All right. Now, on that right side, we want to next do the distributive property if we can. And we can because there is a parentheses. Now, what do we distribute? Do we distribute the negative 4n or the 3? And the answer to that would be the 3 because that's what's attached here. That's what's actually multiplied by the parentheses. So we'll distribute that as 3 times 1, which is 3. And 3 times 6n, which is 18n. And then bring everything else down. We've got negative 67 still by itself there. Negative 4n, which is added there. So now step 2 says to combine any like terms that are on the same side if possible. Now in this case we can do that because we on the right side we have negative 4n and we have plus 18n. So we want to make that just so that there's one n term, and that would be 14n. We just have plus 3 and everything else is the same. Now if you look at it, it's a regular two-step equation. There's only 2 inverse operations we can do, and as long as we do them in the correct order, we'll be golden. We'll get it correct. So that correct order means we're going to start from the one that's not attached to the variable. We'll subtract 3 to get rid of the plus 3. We've got negative 70 equals 14n. And then finally we will divide by 14. And we get n, or negative 5 equals n. Or, in other words, n equals negative 5. So following that procedure will help you. But really what we're adding to what we've done before, we're looking for any distributing now. That's always going to be first. If there's any distributing possible, we're going to do that first, followed by combining like terms, followed by regular 2 steps. So I've got 2 examples I'd like you to try. Why don't you pause it right here and try example, well, we already did 1 and 2, so we can try 3 and 4. And then once you're done, unpause it and you can see how to go about doing it. Alrighty, so if you look at the one on the left, number 3, I took that 6 and distributed it to the d and the minus 8, so I got 6d minus 8 equals negative 12, so that's where I'm at right here. Then I took that, it looks like a 2-step equation, so I added 48 to both sides. And I ended up with 6d equals 36. Finally, I divided by 6 on both sides, and I ended up with an answer of 6 for D. Number 4, there is distributing to do on that left side where the variable is. but only with the 2 that's attached to the parentheses. So I took that 2 and I distributed right there to the 4 and to the -1, and I got 8w minus 2. Alright, so I was doing that part right there. Then I took what was in the boxes here, combined those because they're like terms on the same side, and I changed it to an 8, which ends up being right here. And it's just 8w plus 8 equals 60. So I brought down the 8w. And then I have, so that's where I'm at right now. Then I subtracted 8 from both sides and ended up with 8w equals 52. And then when you divide that by 8, you end up with w equals 6.5 or 6.5. All right. So that's how you do it when you got distributing. Or distributing and like terms. So just to revisit our goals, our 2 learning targets were to solve equations using the distributive property and to do it with combining like terms. We did both things in this lesson. So I hope you took good notes on that. Include those examples. And hopefully soon you'll be moving on up the ranks out of Staff Sergeant. All right. See you next time.